Hi, I'm Michael Alter, Professor of Entrepreneurship here at the Polsky Center at Booth. And I'm here to talk about entrepreneurial selling and the importance of selling in entrepreneurship and how to think about it. One of the most important things that people talk about is I've got a great product, I don't really need to be able to sell. But that's just not true. And as Peter Thiel, one of the PayPal Mafia, very, very successful entrepreneur and investor, has really sort of said and coined quite well. If you've invented something, but you haven't invented an effective way to sell it, you got a bad business. Because no matter how good the product is, you got to be able to sell it. People have to know what it is. And one of the challenges as an entrepreneur is you're not just selling to get customers, you're really selling in 360 degrees. You have to sell investors on giving you money. You have to sell suppliers, especially in some of today's world where they have supply constraints, to actually allocate some of their supply to you. You have to sell analysts in the media to endorse your service or your product. And you have to sell employees to come join you. And oftentimes that's for longer hours, less money, and more risk. And that's a real sales opportunity. And then, of course, you've got to sell customers to come join you. So as an entrepreneur, this is much more than just a basic sale. You're selling all the time in all the directions. And one of the things that I think is important is there's a series of myths that entrepreneurs and people have about selling. And I want to sort of dispel a number of them. The first one is, with a great product, it'll take care of itself. Sales will just take care of itself. A little bit towards what Peter Thiel said, right? Ralph Waldo Emerson said, if you build a better mousetrap, they will beat a path to your door. And the reality is that's just not true, because if they don't know where your door is, they can't beat a path to it. And so it's absolutely critical that you have sales in addition to a good product. One of the other things people talk about is that sales is this thing that's a subset of marketing, and that marketing is the real dominant force, and marketing drives everything. And sales is just this sort of dirty thing that somebody does, but not at the big corporate centers. And the reality is, again, that's a myth that can be very destructive. In any business, it's pretty situational in terms of how important marketing is and how important sales is. And so some of these businesses, marketing should be dominant and critical, but in others, sales should be dominant and critical. And then still in others, they need to have a nice balance between the two. One of the other myths that a lot of entrepreneurs say is, I'm a product entrepreneur, I'm a technology entrepreneur, I'm a finance entrepreneur. I've got a great idea, I know how to solve a problem, and I'm going to hire someone to come in and do all the sales for me. And what we've seen over and over again is that just never works. You can bring in someone to help you with a little bit of the sales and help you with the process, but the vision of your idea and translating it and getting those first couple of customers is absolutely critical that you translate it, because you have this idea that's so different than what everybody else has. And over again, when we see people try to hire that out to a professional salesperson, it almost inevitably fails because we lose something in the translation as they're trying to create it. And then the last one has to do with, I'm just not a salesperson. I'm not the life of the party. I'm not the best joke teller at the bar. I don't like to sit and go out and have drinks and talk to people all night. I'm just not that gregarious. I'm just not that good a salesperson. And the reality is, and the research shows, that people can be great salespeople regardless of what their personality type is. And a matter of fact, if you look at it, the research shows on a bell-shaped curve on the left-hand side being strongly extroverted and on the right-hand side being strongly introverted, that pretty much the 90-95% in the middle of the bell-shaped curve on either extreme can be quite good at selling as long as they learn to sell in their own style and their own approach. It's just those real polar opposites on either end that are challenged. And so the idea that you can't learn to sell is just not true. You just have to focus on it. And when you think about what is it we're learning to sell, I think of sales as really two different areas. One is a very sort of logical, process, math-based approach, and that's sort of the process of selling. And then the other is the methodology, the skills and the learned behaviors that you're deploying non-linearly, meaning you're going to deploy them at different points in time and a little bit iteratively in the process. And so the methodology and the skills are really important to learn. How to handle objections, how to close, how to qualify. And then the other side, the math or the process, is relatively straightforward. And if you think about selling, is we're really driving things through a funnel. And at the top of the funnel, we have leads. And then as they go through becoming from leads, they become prospects. And then from prospects, they might become opportunities. And then from opportunities, we might do a demo. They might become a proposal. And then hopefully some of them are going to become customers, and then ongoing customers who then buy more and stay with you. And so if you think about these different gates or stages in a funnel, it's important that you have a clear definition of each one so that you can track and measure and manage over time. And then that you're tracking both the absolute numbers, how many leads do you have, how many demos are you getting, how many closed sales you are, but also the ratios going from how many leads to how many demos and how many demos to how many closed. And if you track those over time, if you track those across reps, if you track those across different lead sorts or different industries you might be selling into, there's all sorts of great knowledge you can glean to understand how to be more effective, how to be more efficient, where to focus, and what to fix. And so you take those mathematical aspects of the funnel and you combine them with a series of skills, these methodologies, these learned behaviors. And together, that's what makes an entrepreneur successful and, quite frankly, a salesperson successful. And one of the truths when you start to think about entrepreneurial selling, and an entrepreneur out of Booth, very successful, who had been part of the New Venture Challenge, Phil Leslie, in his first company, Pro On Go, said after he started to understand what I'm about to talk about next, which is the entrepreneurial sales process and skill set and how it's different than professional selling, that if he'd understood these sort of entrepreneurial selling skills, he could have grown his top-line revenues 4 times faster on half the capital. So please obviously don't tell his investors that. And so I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurial selling and how it's different than more traditional professional selling. One of the things I think is important is to define what is entrepreneurial selling. And entrepreneurial selling is really you as the entrepreneur at the beginning as a sales force of one. And it starts way before you have any revenue, because as we talked earlier, you're selling in 360 degrees to get investors, to get suppliers, to get employees. And it continues on until you get to a point where you've got a sort of repeatable, scalable process to generate revenue. And that's sort of the early entrepreneurial phase of the process. And if you think about it, there's a big difference between that entrepreneurial phase and more of a professional selling phase. And the way I sort of think about that, I started my career out in IBM, and I was a professional salesperson for IBM. And at IBM, they have thousands of professional salespeople, and they've been doing it for years, 50, 70, 80 years or more. And when they think about the sales that they need, they know exactly the kind of people they need to hire. They know the skills and tools they need to train those people with. They know the activities that those people need to do. And if they follow that process, there's not a lot of ambiguity. They will be successful and able to grow their sales. And that's what I was. I was a coin-operated salesperson at IBM. And at IBM, I really sat at the top of the pyramid with this huge organization as part of that base of the pyramid supporting me. And so they helped me in that they told me who I was going to call on. I had a territory that was defined. They actually told me how I was going to make money. And they had people that actually defined the product and did the product strategy that I could use to explain to people how a product might be evolving. They helped with the marketing. They helped me to identify and find leads. They even would write an email, get me in front of somebody. And then they would provide me with the marketing materials and literature. And my job was to go in and to sort of build the trust and understanding of my customer. And then if I needed a technical question, I had other support that would come in and a systems engineer who could run a demo and help show how the technology works. And then once someone said, yeah, we'd like to buy, I could bring in another rep who could help me understand if they wanted to buy it or if they wanted to lease it. I could bring in somebody else when they said, yes, we're ready to make the order, that actually had the contract and that could fulfill the order and get all the proper paperwork signed and defined. And then I had someone else who could come in and actually implement it. And they had done lots of implementations. So we had this process all defined and a timeline and an implementation team. And then once it was implemented, I had someone else who could help set it up and bill it. And then I had someone who could make sure that on an ongoing basis they were successful. And so I really played within a defined role, helping to manage a process without a lot of ambiguity. Not necessarily that easy, but clearly understood in terms of what I needed to do to be successful with all sorts of people supporting me in how I wanted to go through. If you contrast that to to an entrepreneur just starting out, and I saw this in building businesses and as an entrepreneur, it's almost the exact opposite of that, in that I was the one that was holding everything up because I was the only person there. And so I had to start way back on the far side in thinking about who am I actually targeting? I've got this great new idea. Am I targeting small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses? Am I targeting a particular industry or particular geography? And then what is my value proposition that I actually have to go match against those folks? And do I have it right? And oh, by the way, those folks that I want to go see that might be a small business or a large business, how do I actually get in front of them? So I got to write my own email to potentially get in front of somebody. And then when I do get in front of them, what do I say? Well, I kind of got to figure that out. And what's the product roadmap? I've kind of got to figure that out. And what marketing materials or what leave behinds might I need? Or if I need a demo, what does that look like? How does it work? I need to define that. And then when they say, yes, we'd like to buy, I can be really excited, but what does an order look like? Is it a yes? Is it a fancy contract? How do I want to price it? Do I want to charge them up front? Do I want to charge them per month? Do I want to charge them on an annual basis? Do I want to charge them a one-time fee and then an ongoing maintenance? And what is the contract and what does the order actually look like? And then how do we actually install something we've never sold before? And then make sure they're happy on an ongoing basis. And so you can see that this becomes quite a big undertaking, and it's a much, much broader role than the more traditional professional salesperson has. Because we're creating stuff, we're building stuff, we're architecting stuff where it's never existed before. Very, very different than the process that I was running. And what that really drives me to believe and to think through and hopefully give you some thought is around one size doesn't fit all in terms of the type of sales role that you as the entrepreneur need to play and how that evolves over time, as well as the salespeople you're hiring and the sales managers you're hiring. And that over time, you move from more of an entrepreneurial selling role, and as things get more structured, more replicable, into more of a professional sales role. And what that means is what you're hiring needs to be very different, and you need to understand where you are and what stage you are to find the right people. And there's a great article that was published in the Harvard Business Review by Mark Leslie and Charles Holloway, and it was called The Sales Learning Curve. And what they did is they sort of described this, I think, in a really effective way to understand what am I looking for in salespeople depending on where the state of my business is. And so on the one hand, you have these early entrepreneurial salespeople who they call Renaissance people, and they put them in this quadrant where they're red, so I'll call them the red people, if you will. And these are the folks that are great early on in your business because they're great at creating something where it didn't exist. These are the folks that love the ambiguity. They build great trust with their prospects, and each sale is unique to them. There isn't a common thread because they're going to find the right opportunity for them. And as an entrepreneur starting out, this is an important role for you or for a salesperson to have because you're not quite sure what the right market segment is, what the right messaging is, what the right value proposition, or even all the features and functions that you need. And so these are the folks that build that create that love that kind of ambiguity, I'll figure it out world. And then as the business evolves and you start to get into this scaling, rinse and repeat like I was at IBM, you're really looking for a lot more sales reps and almost coin-operated sales reps. And so they call them coin-operated sales reps and they describe them in a green quadrant. And so there are probably more of these in the world because as businesses scale, they need more of these folks. But these are the kind of people that are still also great at building trust, but they love to be the expert. They don't like the ambiguity that the red folks do. They want to know if I do these activities and I have these skills and I follow this process, I can be successful. And to them, sales have a lot more commonality between one sale and the next sale. And they love that because it gives them the familiarity, it gives them the expertise to rinse and repeat and do the next one. And so when you think about it, the red folks and the green folks are very, very different. And it doesn't mean that a red folk couldn't do what a green person does or vice versa. But it really means that's not what they like to do, it's not where they get their energy, and it's not how they focus. And so what ends up happening inevitably is you need to be able to transition from from a group of red early stage entrepreneurial salespeople into a replicable, more scalable green coin operated stage. And the group that helps you do that are really the Renaissance enlightened folks. And so the red Renaissance folks become these yellow enlightened folks who are able to manage that transition. And these are the rare folks. They're almost like a unicorn. They're not so easy to find because they have the skill set to work early on and build something, but they also have the ability to sort of step back and view it and understand that repeatable, scalable aspect of it to help transition and train some of the folks in the green, more coin-operated world. And so when you bring all of this together and you think both about your role, whether you're at the early stage or the managers that you might hire as your first sales manager, if you hire someone that comes from a big, large organization that's really about understanding how to scale and build, and you put them into an early stage organization where you haven't figured out what the sales process is, who you're really targeting, what the value proposition is, how your pricing works, all of these things, oftentimes you see them struggle because that's not the environment that they're used to and that's not what they're good at. And vice versa as you go the other way. And the same is true for your sales reps. And so if you're looking on LinkedIn to find your first salesperson in your early stage, think about someone who's worked at a small company successfully, who is comfortable with ambiguity, and who believes as they talk that every sale is almost unique, realizing that as you start to go, you're going to have to help translate them into that more scalable role. And that might mean that these folks either leave your organization as you scale, or maybe you send them on to your next new product where you're going to be entrepreneurial again while you scale up your existing product or your existing market segment. And so overall, I just encourage you to think about where you are in the process, what type of salesperson you need, and realizing that they're not all homogenous, they're not interchangeable. And just like in lots of different roles, there are very different roles in different salespeople depending on the stage of your business, for your managers and for your staff and for the role that you play. And so one size really doesn't fit all. And yet it's really important that you think through this and you manage these things because in today's world, even though we're a lot more digital, there are still more salespeople than ever. And the salesperson's role to help guide and cut through the noise and all of the information that's out there to make meaning of it is critical. And the data shows that. And here's a chart that actually shows the importance of salespeople in closing. And as a matter of fact, 40% of a reason somebody bought had to do with the skills of the salesperson, which is, as you can see here, twice as important as the price, almost twice as important as the quality. Again, you shouldn't have bad quality, but think about that. The salesperson was twice as important as the quality of the product. And they were significantly more important than even the features and the benefits that that product has. So you should certainly make sure that you have a good quality product with the right features. But if you don't have the right salespeople, it's going to be a lot harder to be successful. And if you don't play the right role in building that and growing that over time. And that's really the keys to starting and thinking about being an entrepreneur and entrepreneurial selling. I wish you luck. Happy selling.